The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon or good morning to our friends on the West Coast. Thanks very much for joining us today for this introduction to InVision 2020. We're pretty excited to be able to show you this new release of InVision today, and we're grateful to you for making the time to spend with us today. We have Ben Yetman joining us today, our product manager. He's going to do the demos. And we'd love to have you ask questions through the questions window throughout the presentation here. And once we get to the end of the demo, we'll circle back to those questions and make sure that we have time to answer any questions you might have during the course of the presentation here. So before we get started, let's just talk a little bit about what we're going to go over today. We're going to review the fact that InVision is now a part of Cartograph. What you formerly knew as Penbase Solutions is now part of the Cartograph team. We're going to overview the InVision 2020 features, and then we're going to have a pretty in-depth demo of that. Then we'll circle back to your questions and answers that show up in the Q&A or the question section of the of the presentation here. So just a little bit about Cartograph. Penbase Solutions merged with Cartograph as of the first of the year. We're really excited about this. Cartograph is a great company. They have terrific asset and work management capabilities, and that's always been a bit of a gap in our offering at Penbase. And so now to have the ability to bring really world-class asset and work management to our customers is something we're really excited about. And from Cartograph's point of view, the ability to bring asset and work management indoors for their customers is also very exciting. Cartograph is based in Dubuque, Iowa. Great group of folks. We build and implement all our own software, so a highly reliable group of people, and we find that there is just a great synergy between the two teams as we come together. Cartograph is primarily focused on public works kinds of applications, often in the local government space. And so where we align with that really is in the facilities area, and we really build out their capabilities when it comes to managing buildings and infrastructure for their customers and for our customers. So what the team that you formerly knew as Penbase Solutions is now the buildings and infrastructure team within Cartograph, and InVision is the product that we are harmonizing into Cartograph's product portfolio, and you'll see a lot more of exciting things coming out of this synergy in the coming year. I'll let Ben speak to that to the extent he would like to do that. So from a Cartograph point of view, we're really focusing a lot on high performance operations. Most of the folks on the call today are campus folks. We've got new customers. We've got some old customers. The University of Washington team is on the call today. They get the Cupid doll for being the first customer to deploy InVision 2020 into production. Pretty excited about that. Nicely done, Aaron and team. And so our conversation today will be very focused on higher education kinds of issues. So when we talk about high performance operations, it's really about the high performance campus, indoors, outdoors, above ground, underground. We really feel like we are the only offering in the market today that can truly address that whole set of capabilities. So our role in this mission is to address the buildings and infrastructure piece, and that it really is what InVision's mission is, what our vision is. And so to show you a little bit more about what InVision's highlights for 2020 are, Ben will take over in a second and he'll show you some of these new capabilities that are coming out in InVision 2020. There's some great new usability features, drag and drop support for docs, for images, for employees in a variety of different move workflows. Move scenarios is a great advance in our ability to move people in groups. KPI targets really allow you to focus on the issues that you're most concerned about, depending on who you are within your organization. And then spherical image support is a great advance, I think, in the ability to do simple but very powerful fit for purpose kind of analysis for lots of different stakeholders across the organization. So without further ado, I'm going to now turn it over to Ben, and I'm going to make him the presenter, and he'll take you through a demo of InVision. Over to you, Ben.
Great, thank you, Stu, and hello, everyone. There are a bunch of things we're pretty excited about at this release, and glad we have a chance to share some of these concepts with you today in action. The first thing we'll start with are a number of productivity enhancements. While you won't see this called out specifically in release notes, one of the things we did for this release was take the time to sit back and look at all the places that people spend time waiting on something, or places where it takes more than one click to get to where you need to go. And so you'll notice across all of the products at InVision 2020, a number of productivity enhancements that let you do things faster, quicker, and hopefully get your job done sooner. One of those is drag and drop. So if we get back from the field and we've just finished a project or in the middle of a project, we've taken some photos, we've got a material log, we've got a couple PDFs that are part of this project. If we went into InVision in the past and said, okay, I want to just add these documents to our document management capability, you'd have to click through and one by one, browse for the file, find the file, upload it, and then you'd see it show up. We've really focused more now on, instead of having to do 27 clicks to get there, what if I could just grab all those documents I want, drag them and drop them, and see those upload right away. So whether it's a space, a building, a project, an asset, drag and drop for adding content or managing documents in all the apps is one of those productivity enhancements. Another place where drag and drop comes into play is if we jump into a building. Here in building H, and I can see that we have a couple spaces assigned. I can see the label of the person who's actually assigned there, and in our move workspace, I want to assign Michael Abrash to the space here. In the past, you would have had to have gone in, click this space, look for assigned employees, another click here, another click there, find a search, and once you finally find the person, another final click to save. That comes out to about 8 clicks. Takes way too long. So now you can actually just drag and drop people into the space and go through the same exact workflow. Or if I decide, you know what, I don't want to drag that person, I want to actually move Aldrich to the space next to him, I can do that. Or if I want to actually move this person out of that space, and I don't want to put them on this floor, I need to find another floor. Actually, we'll go up to the second floor. I can jump up to the second floor, I can find a vacant space, and I can add the person there. So the ability to do very quick drag and drop for simple assignments is another one of those big productivity enhancements. One other place I know we've all spent time twiddling our thumbs waiting is in somebody's favorite feature, printing. So let's say we wanted to come in and we've got our view by switched to organizations assigned, or maybe let's do it back to availability. and we want to actually share this with somebody. So we want to create a PDF print of this floor. We could, if we wanted to, go through good old-fashioned printing, except I disabled it for today, surprise. But instead of having to go through the print dialog, give it a title, give it a subtitle, choose a layout, click print, and then wait for the print to generate and then download, we've actually been adding more and more to our automated block plans. What automated block plans do is behind the scenes actually generate a high quality layout. They will rotate and scale the floor to that layout. And based on how many you want to create, you can have different themes of your downloadable PDF block plans. I'll click this one for space type. And this, as you can see, the floor is no longer rotated. It's actually orthogonally displayed. It's zoomed to the floor extent, and we can see the symbology that we were interested in with the counts of each of those displayed as we would expect. So I didn't have to wait at all. These actually run behind the scenes whenever you want to schedule them. So you know the data is going to be up to date, and you can create as many of these as you potentially want. What's really cool is you can actually kind of customize or configure what is included in the layout. I have an example here that has, the names of space assignees in addition to the space number. We've seen others where people put the square footage of the space as well as so you can get pretty creative with the number of automated block plans that you choose to configure and make available to your end users. So those are a handful of the productivity enhancements. We've also done a lot on the modernization front to make the apps even smaller and faster to load, especially on the Explorer side. And you'll notice some of those as you start using the apps. So one of the big ticket items that we'll move into next is Move Scenarios. And Move Scenarios is a new addition to the Move Tools capability. And you'll notice over here, we have our Move Tools work palette. We have our Move Workspace, which we've had for, I guess, the past release or so. This is really a place that if you're working on day-to-day work, you're trying to find a place to assign a handful of employees, and you just need a parking lot to hold them while you go to search for space. This uses same kind of drag and drop interaction. So I can add somebody here. I can then search for either an appropriate space or a floor that I want to perform an assignment. When I get to that space and I want to actually perform the assignment, I can still use all my view bys to figure out where I might have availability. And when I want to, I can just do a very simple drag and drop in order to perform that assignment. So that's a way to work through a backlog of people you want to assign today, right now, things you're working on, which will actually be part of your production. But we also know that there are always what-if scenarios that organizations need to better understand and work through. So the new capability around Move Scenarios can be used to ask those really complicated what-if questions for a bunch of different types of potential moves. So if we open up Move Scenarios, I can see here we have 3 different types of scenarios that I've created. One, which is very common, happens all the time, is we just want to look at a test fit, and that could be at a single floor, could be for an entire building, sort of a restack, and you just want to see if I was to move people that are working on the same project closer together on the same floor, how do I shuffle people around to optimize productivity and minimize disruption for moves? We could have another scenario where we have a new building coming online, and for the first time we have people moving into the building. So we have to figure out, well, where are all those people gonna go, even if the building's not done yet? We might also have another really common occurrence of either part of a floor or an entire floor needs to be renovated. So we've got to figure out where to move all the people on that part of the floor for the next 6 months and then remember where we moved them so we can move them back once we're done. So all of these are very common needs to ask and evaluate different types of scenarios. And if I go into a scenario here, we've got a very simple test fit for building W. We can see that this is currently in draft status. That means we're still evaluating where to move people and still in the process of doing our work. We can add people and floors just like we do to the workspace, or we could actually even use filters. So if we want to say, I only want to see the people in my current department, and I really only want to see those that don't have any assignments, or maybe the greedy people that have more than one assignment, they're the ones I want to add to this. So I can see I've got 3 people, and I can easily drag and drop them over, or I could, if I want, actually bring all 3 employees from that page in at the same time. So I'll go ahead and do that. So I go back to my summary now. I can see I've got 21 people that are part of this test fit. I've already done a little bit of work here, so I only have 8 left that I need to finish assignments for. So I'm going to go look at those 8, and it's going to filter the list just to show that the people that don't have an assignment. And I'm going to jump to that floor that we're working on, because it's time to kind of roll up our sleeves and get down to details. So we'll probably turn on a view by so we can understand types of space we're moving people into. You can see some of my previous work here. There were people assigned to this space. And if you see a strike through, that means I've unassigned them from that space. You'll see Crowther here has been assigned temporarily as part of this scenario. And it might be that I want to remove Allman from that space. I'm going to put Allen back in that space. And I can see the map update to kind of let me know where I'm at and what I'm doing. As I go through and do these assignments, these are not actual production assignments. These are just a scenario. So nothing I'm doing here is going to actually affect any production data. I am free to do whatever I want and make as many mistakes as I want and back up and try again and do everything we need to get it just right. So you'll notice on the right, as I'm moving people in, we're going pretty quickly here. I'm able to just run through, do these drag and drop assignments, and get through my list. One other thing you'll notice here is quite a me to say, hey, do you want to remove people from multiple spaces or just move them from one space? So when we get through our initial assignments, see we're done, one of the other things that we can start to do then is to say, okay, we've got everybody assigned as part of this scenario. And I can see some of these people multiple space assignments before, and now we have one proposed new assignment. So we can go in and get very granular about which of the spaces do we want to remove them from, and are there certain spaces that we might actually want to preserve for them. So if we have an employee that works on multiple campuses, or people that perform different roles in different parts of campus on different buildings, it might be valid for them to have 2 different office assignments. And maybe we want to remove them from these 2, but we'll leave space 698 as well. So Francis now has this existing space and this new space here. So as you go through, you can get very granular about how you handle a multi-assignment policy, because we know in the real world, that's almost always the norm. And there are always going to be special circumstances where you need to accommodate those kinds of folks. You'll also see that anytime you have a question of, wait, where did we find Albert Einstein again? Where did we move him from? You can really easily click the origin space or where we're moving Albert from. You can always click the destination to figure out where that person's going. So really easy to reference the from and the to as part of a move scenario. And it may be that we wanted to add additional floors. If we were doing a building restack, we could have added multiple floors here. I have one because it's more of a floor level shuffle. But we've gotten to a point now, we've gotten through all of our people assigned in this test fit. So all 22 have draft assignments. And we kind of want to evaluate how well did we do here? Does this meet our objectives? Did we make any errors? And to do that, we can go to this next step, which is if we go to finalize, this will actually run all of the analysis on that scenario, and it'll give us any errors or warnings that pop up. If you notice, we didn't have a single error or warning there, which means everything we did was perfect, which I find hard to believe, but hey, I guess we got lucky. So if we were going to go in and maybe we'll remove this person out and we'll make a space that's over allocated, or even if we have people that don't have an assignment now, so I got one person, as I start going through and finalize, I'll get warnings. And these warnings are going to tell me all the places where what I just did in the scenario violates a business rule that we have. So that could be as simple as, hey, everybody needs an assignment as part of the scenario, or you can't over assign a space so it's over capacity, or your space class doesn't meet with the actual person that you're moving. So you just moved an intern into class A executive space. So those are the validation rules that run. These are standard with our move scenarios now. And if you want, you could choose to ignore those final warnings and proceed. It might be valid. It might be you have an office that 2 part-time people are going to share. So of course you move 2 people there, even though the limited capacity is 1. So you have the ability to override warnings. If there are actual errors or errors in the underlying data, you won't be able to override that. So let's say we wanted to ignore this and finalize. We now go into final status, and it might be now, it might be previous, or really any time in between that we want to remember all the changes that we made. Sure, I can see them on the map, but it's kind of hard to look at all those names and numbers. So you also have a move manifest. And the move manifest is what you can share with people at any point to help them understand all the changes in your scenario. So if we open this up, this is very simple. Everybody can use it because it's just Excel. And it shows you all the people that you've added to a scenario, the unassignments that you made as part of your scenario, and where are you proposing to move them? So what space, building, floor. You can see there are quite a few here where we've unassigned them from multiple spaces and we've consolidated them down into another space. In some cases, you've removed them from like 3 spaces and consolidated to 1. So this move manifest can be used to share with other planners. It can be used once you're actually ready to execute, actually sharing this with the operations folks that are going to help move boxes and transfer IT equipment. And it can also be used as a historical record. So if we did go through and decide we were going to apply this move, we could apply this. And again, we'll say, yep, we'll ignore, sorry, Paul Allen, you don't get a space. These assignments are now in production. And if we wanted to, we could go back and look at that move manifest anytime in the future to remember, what did we actually do for that move? So if we go back and look at applied, we can see, yep, there's our test fit, and we can remember exactly what happened, who moved where, and take a little trip down memory lane. So move scenarios allow you to very quickly create a new scenario. You can move it through different phases. If we wanted to add a new one here, there's very little overhead in creating one because these are meant to be pretty much zero impact and the ability to ask all kinds of what if questions. So we'll do our scenario. It may be that we decide after we get into our scenario that, you know what, this scenario didn't quite work. I just want to abandon this because we don't really want to pursue it anymore. And that won't show up in your draft list, but if we ever do want to go back and dust that off, we could actually look at which of those did we kind of put on the back burner for now, and we could easily take that back to our draft status and then start adding people and floors like we would. So if we wanted to dust this one off, we could easily start adding a floor, start adding a bunch of people, and jump right back into where we were. So you'll see a lot of drag and drop interaction here for people, for floors, for actually doing your test fit assignments and unassignments and moves. And we have made some deliberate design choices here based on how and where you're doing your work. You're looking at me doing my work on a laptop right now, and I've got a mouse and a comfy office, and I've got buttons I can click on my mouse, but we know that's not where everybody does their work. Oftentimes you're in the field, you're on a tablet, you're actually looking at spaces as you're trying to walk through and plan things out. So one other thing you'll notice is this has all been designed for use on tablets as well. So yeah, we can use drag and drop as long as we can click and drag and unclick. But you also notice if I tap, you'll see at the bottom for touch devices, we have an assigned space dialog. So same thing, I could use this on a laptop, on my iPad. I tap the space I want to perform the assignment on, and the assignment works the exact same way. So there are methods for using this in different environments, mobile, touch interfaces, as well as kind of back at the office in your comfy chair. So that's a very quick look at move scenarios. We're excited about this one, and foreshadowing a bit to our summer release, we have a bunch of additional enhancements that we're working on to go even further into making the job of applying a scenario even easier. Part of that is actually us looking at creating move requests behind the scenes back to the system that's going to actually do the work. So integrating with Cartograph, who does that exact same kind of thing to create a move project once we get through to a point where we've actually are ready to apply a move scenario. So some exciting stuff there, and some more usability and productivity enhancements based on feedback. As you guys start using this, we are all ears. Please let us know what you think and anything we can do to improve the usability of this. But we're pretty excited about how usable the drag and drop interface makes the often very tedious process of doing test fits. So we'll switch gears here a little bit. One of the other things that is very apparent to a lot of people, but people that maybe don't work in data as often, not so much, if you're looking at space, if you're looking at buildings, if you're looking at any of the things that you manage, we know that this space right here is not just a row in a database. This is not just a polygon represented on a floor plan. We know that there's a lot that goes on in any space. There's a lot of context related to any asset. And one of the ways that we try to help people understand that, of course, is sort of the visual nature of InVision, the fact that we display so much visually, but we also have started adding the ability to add documents that help understand the context, image galleries, and those image galleries really start to let you get a picture of the thing you're looking at. And at this release, we've added support for inline spherical image control. So this brings really more of a 360-degree context to any of the business records that you're managing in InVision. So if we wanted to help people understand what this space looked like, I've uploaded a couple of spherical images, and when you do that, we can open up our gallery, and instead of just seeing a single photo, we can actually start to communicate information like, what did that space look like when it was under construction? Where do we actually have MEP before the sheetrock went up? As a historical view into that space, what do we have behind the drop ceiling? Or switching gears, what if we're interested in, we're an emergency planner and we have a spherical image for that space that helps us understand where emergency exits, where do we have our CCTV cameras, our physical security, the ability to understand blind spots and to really immerse yourself in that space is powerful, whether you're someone working on construction, safety and security, someone looking at classroom programming, trying to figure out all the different layouts a classroom has with projectors and other equipment. So adding these support for spherical images, when you upload those, our APIs now detect that, they process it and handle these as sort of special images, and then you can let users interact with these in really rich interactive ways. So we're excited about this one, and I know quite a few of our existing customers already make a lot of use of spherical images, and so for them this is going to make it even easier to kind of streamline access to that content and make it available to people for different purposes. Next thing, we'll move back to home, where we haven't really spent any time today. But on InVision Home, one thing you'll notice is we've always had KPI cards. But at this release, you'll see some of the KPI cards here look a little bit different. And that's because we've enabled a feature for KPI cards that let you define targets. So people create KPI cards for a bunch of different reasons. Sometimes it's just for information display. You know, here's our total square footage for the university. Other times it's for exception monitoring. We want to make sure that we don't have any spaces that are unclassified. Other times it might be a range that you're trying to manage to. We want to have between 75 and 85% occupancy for buildings over a certain square footage, and we don't want that to drop below, 90% of our buildings. So what these let you do is you still define your KPI cards the exact same way, but when you go into settings, you'll notice a new area that lets you define a target. And the target will let you set a threshold. So depending on how you've configured your KPI card, the value should be above, the value should be below, or you can actually define a range to say, this should be between 0 and 2. And when you define that, you can see that there's a target defined. You can see what that target is when you roll over it. And if an exception is met, you'll see it turn a bright red color. So this is a way to continue to define the things you care about through your KPI cards, but also have a very easy indicator the second you log in that something has met a threshold in your target that really needs your attention. And of course, if that happened to be this one, my department now has 12 unassigned employees, you can still very easily open that in Space Manager. It will apply that filter, show those 12 employees, and you could then right away add those to your workspace, go add spaces, or create a new scenario and do the same kind of thing. So that flow from KPIs, big picture view, live view of the things you care about, understanding what needs your attention, into seeing those records and then giving you the ability to do something about it. That's one of those other kind of system-wide productivity things we've really tried to focus on. Really your complete day, from first login to how long does it take me to actually resolve that or get things done. Not to leave out the system administrators that are on the call today, there are quite a few updates on the IV admin front, and I'll click in here very quickly. We have new updates to support for LDAP-S, or different types of security for some deployment configurations. We have a brand new updated single sign-on set of components to support some of the emerging requirements around secure or same-site cookie use. There are a couple other new connections that are APIs used to do things new and differently on the move scenarios front. So you'll notice a couple new things as you log into IV admin, and you'll also notice a couple things as you start to deploy in how SAML 2 is configured and supported. So that was a whirlwind tour of what's new at 2020. You can read a lot more in detail about these and other things on the Help Center. And of course, if you have any questions, we can field some of those now or schedule follow-on deeper dives to look at some of these things in a bit more detail. So with that, Stu, I think back over to you.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate that. We have had some questions submitted through the webinar here, and so we can go through some of these. Dr. Stefanoff from UMass Amherst has a number of questions. First question is kind of logistics. Will there be a recording of the webinar made available? Yes, we will be posting a recording of the webinar to our website later this week. There's a question here about, do you have plans to support the use of SQL Server reporting services? Ben, do you want to speak to that just a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, we currently use Crystal Reports as our core reporting engine. We have actually looked at SQL Server reporting services and are continuing to evaluate that, particularly with our new friends and teammates at Cartograph. There are some additional really exciting reporting capabilities that they bring to the table. So I'd say that's not a core supported thing today, but we're continuing to explore that. And if you got specific questions about how we might be able to do that better, please let us know. I'd love to talk through that.
Another question from Dr. Stefanoff. Do we envision adding ability for users to add markers or comments, and I'm kind of extending this, measurements within the 360-degree photos within the spherical images? Ben, do you want to take a stab at that?
Great. Yeah, great question. This is one of the things I'm most excited about and what we're kind of working on parts of the rest of the year. So today we have support for uploading a spherical image, and that means you can pan, tilt, zoom, you just view it. There are a number of other capabilities that are part of the open source library we're using here that would allow us to do a lot more with that interaction. So you could tag things, you could actually link spherical images together for sort of mini tours. You can create hotspots and anchor tags and all kinds of stuff that allow you to interact with the image in other ways. One of the other things that we're starting to explore, and this is very early days, of course, is there's a lot of visual content for a room in that spherical image that's valuable and important to other people. Could be important to someone managing assets, could be important to somebody managing the safety and security. So actually looking at enabling organizations to use these 360 photos to actually pull out and identify room contents compared to what you might already know for an equipment inventory or like a fire extinguisher inventory, and show people where there may be things that they don't have in their inventory. So actually getting into a bit of machine learning around pulling out standard objects from those 360 photos to help you validate your existing inventory and also populate parts that might be missing. So stay tuned on the spherical image front. There's a lot of really exciting stuff that we're just starting to get into now for the summer release and beyond.
Awesome, thank you. Next question is from Anthony out at the UW. And this has to do with scenario planning for orgs as opposed to people. So many customers, particularly in the higher ed space, don't actually assign people to spaces, but they do need to be able to do the same kind of test fit scenario for moving blocks of spaces from one org assignment to another. Can you speak to that just a little bit?
Yeah. So we have a set of features that we're just getting into early design that are all about space planning. And we're not necessarily using the same types of drag and drop scenario interaction here for assigning people, but the planning tools are really more about how can I define areas of use or areas of organization assignment at a course level and sort of a block plan level, floor by floor across multiple buildings and floors. So there are some different features that we're working on for space planning, in particular for both space use and org assignment, that let you go through and do sort of floor plate calculator, bubble plan, and block plan, and define those either by use or by the organizational assignment. So we're definitely working on some parallel capabilities for not just move scenarios for people, but also for space planning at scale with type, use, or org assigned. And those are going to be a lot more interactive, sort of draw, sort of bubble plan creation type tools that'll let you sketch those scenarios out as opposed to a lot of clicking.
Thank you. Next question's from Marco Viola from ESRI. And his question is, do we have a way to export to the ArcGIS Indoors information model? Can you actually speak to our support for ArcGIS Indoors briefly?
Sure. Yeah, so we went through quite a bit of work last year to update the InVision data model to be compatible with the ArcGIS Indoors information model. So today we have support for all the essential ArcGIS Indoor information model attributes and full support for those. So the ability to take InVision data and actually leverage that for indoors is totally supported.
Thank you. Next question is from Aaron at the UW, and he's interested in workflows related to scenarios such as approvals, that sort of thing.
Yeah, a couple other permissions level and workflow related things. Great question, Aaron. So today, a department space admin or an organization space manager can create a scenario. We have a couple permissions and security things we're working on for future release. One of which is if a user is a member of a department space admin group, that they can get a scenario all the way through finalize, but they have to get approval. Only an org space manager can actually move that to the state for apply. So there's another step in there that we're kind of ironing out between our current security groups. There's another interesting one that we just started on that I know UW and others will be interested in, which is not necessarily for scenarios, but being able to restrict or really focus department space admins to their own space. So this will be an optional toggle that either an administrator or an org space manager can enable. And it will essentially enforce the My Organization filter, which would be applied if you log in as a department space admin. Meaning if I'm a member of College of Agriculture, when I log in, I will automatically only see my space. And if I'm a member of more than one org, so I'm a member of the college and also part of the division of trees, I would be able to see those as my additional orgs and kind of filter between them. But this will be a thing that allows organizations to really focus department space admins on their own space so that they can get their job done quicker, better, faster. So I know that's one that UW has been asking for a while. So we've got that one in the works. The approval process from department space admin to org space manager for a scenario before it can get applied. And then the other part of the workflow I mentioned before we're really excited about is once you get to final, once you want to actually commit that, having the ability to integrate a request right into the UI to reach out to the system for work to request that actual move, which would include, move date, would include need for materials, equipment, boxes, all those optional request items as well.
Thank you. Our friend Andrew Sama from Notre Dame has a question about line assets as opposed to point assets. Line and polygon assets are supported today out of the box, indoors or outdoors. You can pull those in using our data interop tools into the building. Our friends at Mohegan have done a lot of that, actually pulling in their MEP into InVision. So that's something that's possible to do out of the box today. We're happy to talk with you about that more at any time. Wendy Barrelson has a question that I'm going to paraphrase the question, which is when are we going to get a CCA for Space Manager?
Yeah, that's a great question. I keep asking that myself. So I can tell you for right now, it's a pretty big lift to get that to a point on par with Asset Manager and Explore. So I guess I would turn that question around and say it would be really helpful to help make the case if we could hear from as many people that want that or need that. Anybody that's ever had to use it, updating, validating JSON is anything but elegant. So I feel your pain. But if anybody that's on this webinar sees that as a top priority, please let us know, and I'll do our best to justify investing in that.
Next question is from Andrew at Mohegan. He's interested in plans to further integrate InVision with Portal for ArcGIS.
Yeah, good question. So we have baseline integration today for certain security types. There is a roadmap item that's out a bit to be able to actually use Portal Auth, essentially going the OAuth route. That's not on the roadmap for the summer 2020 release yet, but it is something we're still actively evaluating, and really just comes down to resourcing to pull that off. So I'd say, Andrew, if there are other specific things on the portal front that you're interested in, let me know, and I can make sure that those are known items in backlog with feedback.
Aaron Chevrant is registering his desire for a real CCA for Space Manager. So we have a question.
I didn't show up the biggest feature of the release, and I think Aaron and Anthony will sure appreciate this. There's actually a home button on IV admin now.
Woohoo!
Sorry, that only took us like 3 years to get in there.
It's the little things, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Andrew's loving the IV admin home. So we have a question from Alex out at Penn State, and he's asking about whether scenario moves allow moves that violate business rules. So can you speak to that just a little bit about the difference between warnings and errors, and what can be overridden and what not?
Yeah, so today at this first release, there are a handful of business rules that get validated for any scenario, and those are of a nature that we still allow override. They're pretty basic. So that means if you had a bunch of people in a scenario and you didn't assign 2 of them because you just didn't feel like it, but you still wanted to go ahead with the scenario anyway, we'll let you do that. Or if you have a space that goes over capacity based on what you've just assigned, it'll tell you you've gone over capacity for the space. Are you sure you really want to do that? And like I said before, you might have a very good reason to do that. So, that'll still let you override and commit that scenario if you really want to. There's a big difference between those and errors. So if there is an error, you will not be allowed to commit. You can't go any further. Stop, go back. Don't collect your $200. So those errors are less violations of the core business rules and more underlying issues with data or potentially things it's mostly going to be data issues or relational issues. So if there are business rules that you want to make sure people don't violate, we do have another area that we're working through on design, which is, what if I want to add my own business rules? What if I want to go above and beyond your scenario rules and add my own? How do I do that in a way that's not, eye-bleeding SQL somewhere? Give me a way to actually create and manage business rules and choose if somebody can override them or not. So that's sort of a longer-term roadmap thing that we're working through early design on. But I think that's probably what you're asking about, Alex, is the ability to create your own business rules and choose if people can override them or not.
So that leads right into a question from Aaron out at the Western UW. Wendy reminds me that there are two UWs on the call. There's the University of Washington and the University of Wyoming. Thank you, Wendy. So Aaron is really asking about how customers can create their own business rules for scenarios. Sounds like that's something of big interest.
Yep, hear you loud and clear there.
So to that end, I think this is one of those things that we would really want to engage with you, our customers, on in terms of collecting and validating requirements for the kinds of business rules you would like to see possible to create and to manage, the kinds of permissions that should or should not be allowed, that sort of thing. And so we will, when the time gets closer, we'll pull together some advisory groups related to that. Speaking of which, for anyone who's going to be at the ESRI conference this summer in San Diego, I'm going to put together a meetup at the ESRI user conference for InVision customers. It will likely be right before the cartograph party, which will give us all an excuse to leave the user meeting and go drink beer for anybody that's into that sort of thing. So I'll send out notes to everyone to invite them to participate in that user group session at the ESRI user conference. Aaron's wondering whether or not business rules can be done in kind of a Black Ops SQL workaround today or not.
No. I know I'm going to say no, but I know Aaron always finds a way to make something work. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Aaron's pushing the envelope. Hard no. We'll get back to you on that. Sure. All right. This question and answer has been awesome. I really appreciate everyone's participation in the question and answer session. It really gets down to the questions that are really of most concern to you, our customers. So this kind of interaction is greatly appreciated, and we look forward to more of these. Please let us know if you have any further questions after the call is ended. Reach out and let us know. We'd be happy to circle back with you one-on-one and hear what other questions or concerns you might have, or what other priorities you might have for future releases. For today, I think we'll wrap up. Thank you again for your time. We really appreciate that your willingness to make time to have this conversation with us. We hope we'll see you out at the ESRI user conference in the summer, and Cartograph will be having their own user conference in the fall in Arlington, Texas, for anyone that's interested in coming to that. For now, we appreciate your time and we hope you have a great day.